I was still at the checkout when her son yanked my tomatoes and she without a blink called 911 for 20 police cars. Patricia, the queen of our HOA emails, thought the loudest lie would bury me. She never guessed I had every timestamp logged and a badge tucked under my coat. Let me take you back, because that humiliation was only the beginning. The conveyor belt hummed like a low drone under the Christmas music, and the tomatoes I'd weighed plump skin taut as drumheads coasted toward the cashier's scanner. A pale hand darted over my shoulder and plucked the bag mid-slide. "People like you don't need organic," the boy said. 16, maybe. Acne just starting to lose. His grin had a chip in it. I kept a palm open. "Those are mine," where he corrected, clutching them against his chest like a trophy. "Tyler," a woman's voice clipped across the lane. He didn't hand them back. She was already at his shoulder, lipstick too bright for the fluorescent wash hair sprayed into a helmet. I'd seen that helmet on 1,000 HOA email signatures. "Ma'am," I said, keeping my tone even, "your son grabbed my groceries. He was protecting me," she announced to no one in particular and everyone at once. "From aggression." What aggression, I asked. "The staring," she said loud enough for 3 aisles. "Tyler, sweetie, step back." She fished in her purse. The cashier froze a can of beans in midair. The security guard by the door pretended he had somewhere else to be. I angled my phone in my cart so the mic faced them. The red dot glowed. Above us, the convex mirror turned the checkout lane into a snow globe of elbows and winter coats. Farther up, the overhead camera blinked its little green light. Calling 911, she said, pressing speaker, "As many cars as you can send." "Hang on," I said quietly. "There's no emergency." "There's a dangerous situation," she countered. "This man is harassing my child." The operator's voice came thin through the phone. 911, what's your emergency? This is Patricia Whitford, she said. Eyes on me. Fresh Mart, Oak Street. Send how many units are on tonight? Send as many as you can spare. 10, 20, the big ones. Describe the threat, the operator asked. Tall, Patricia said. Intimidating. He's been watching us. She let the word stretch. He tried to take my son's groceries. I drew a breath, let it go. Your son took my tomatoes, I said at the same volume you used to read a recipe. You can listen to the security footage later. Tyler rolled his eyes. People like him always say that. Like what I asked. He smirked and looked anywhere but at me. Sir, the cashier whispered, do you want me to call the manager? No, Patricia snapped, still on speaker. We're speaking to the police. Ma'am, I said we can sort this out without... Don't you tell me what we can do, she fired back, cheeks coloring. I sit on our HOA board and we protect our property values. We don't let strangers check out 15. The operator said patient professional. If there's no active threat, I'll note your call. Officers will prioritize other emergencies first. Unacceptable, Patricia said. I run this neighborhood. You don't run Fresh Mart, the cashier said before she could stop herself. Her eyes widened at her own bravery. Give him the tomatoes, the security guard said, still not moving. Tyler cuddled the bag as if it were a kitten. These I mean we can buy them. I extended my hand again, palm up. Please. Patricia made a choice then. A small one, but choices stack like bricks. She tugged the bag from Tyler and set it in my cart with 2 fingers as if it might burn her. There, she said. But you stay away from us. Happy to, I said. She ended the call without saying goodbye. Come on, Tyler, she tossed over her shoulder. We're leaving. This place is unsafe. Do you want me to bag these separately? The cashier asked, voice returning to work mode. Together is fine, I said. Thank you. The scanner chirped through my last items. The belt's rubber seam ticked. Behind me, Patricia's heels clapped toward the exit. Tyler's sneakers squeaked behind. The guard watched them go, dilating his eyes like that could count as action. I slid my card, signed, and lifted the bags into the cart. The automatic doors opened with a breath of night air cold enough to sting. The parking lot lights turned the frost to glitter. Somewhere above, a speaker was still playing the same 4 bars of Let It Snow. Out by the carts, Patricia fumbled her keys. A can of soup escaped and rolled in a determined curve across the painted line, right up to a curb tufted with old snow. Tyler jogged to catch it and pretended he wasn't chasing anything. Evening, I said, because I was raised to say so. She stared at me like I'd used a slur. Keep walking. Plan 2, I said, and I did. My car woke with a cough defroster clicking to life. I loaded the bags, carefully, tomatoes nested on top. As I pulled out, I watched her white crossover angle toward the exit, then not toward the exit at all. She hooked left the way locals hook left. Toward my street. I followed at a law-abiding distance. Lakefield in December smells like chimney smoke and cold iron. The city plows had left neat walls along the cul-de-sacs opening mouths for driveways. Our community gate beeped twice as it lifted a tiny stutter it had had since I moved in. I'd started to count on that beep. Things that repeat can be matched in records later. Patricia turned into Birch Ridge, the crossover's brake lights washing the sign with red. I let a car slip between us. She took another left, then another. And then she wasn't just going toward my street. She was on it. I took my spot at the curb because the garage was full of boxes. Her SUV slid into the driveway across from mine. She killed the engine, then saw me step out with a paper sack in each hand. For a moment, nobody moved. You could hear the gate beep in memory, the way a tune sticks. Tyler got out, slammed his door. The soup can had made it to the floorboard at some point and thunked when his foot hit it. "You," Patricia said. "No, absolutely not." "Beautiful evening," I said, because it was. She stooped for a bag mouth tightening when a roll of paper towels tried to flop free. "This is a family neighborhood." "Good," I said. "I like families. You won't like ours," she said, hoisting another bag. "We have standards." "I read them," I said. The HOA welcome packet had been on my kitchen table for 2 weeks, edges already softened from flipping. "I'm a big fan of bylaws." "Fan all you like," she said, and jerked her head toward her door. "Tyler. Inside." He lingered one heartbeat too long, curiosity pulling at him like a string. Whatever he muttered and vanished into their foyer. The cold squeaked under my collar. I balanced the bags and crossed to my mailbox. It's a metal one with a door that never seems to close square. The hinge squealed like a tiny animal as I opened it. Inside the paper rectangle waited heavy stock logo at the top. "Welcome to Birch Ridge," the script read, and under it someone had already dragged a red pen across a paragraph linear as a wound. A sticky note in the same mature cursive. "Please review stain color chart. Fence appears non-conforming." I held the packet, the glue binding gritty under my thumb. Across the street, Patricia stood in her pool of porch light watching me read like a hunter watches a field. One of her bags slipped and thudded to the concrete. A can rolled. It kept rolling past her shoes, past her manicured border of river rock into the gutter. It didn't stop until it found the drain. "Good evening," I said again, because some courtesies you don't cede. She didn't answer. The door snicked behind her. Inside my place, the furnace kicked on with the reliable complaint of old metal. I set the grocery bags on the counter and the packet beside them, its corners crisp against the laminate. The tomatoes went into a ceramic bowl. Sarah had loved blue glaze, crazed with fine lines. I looked at them a long second until the chill left my hands. From the window over the sink, I could see their house. One of the upstairs rooms blinked with a strip of LED lights, blue-purple-pink, then dark. The subdivision was otherwise quiet, no dogs, no laughter, just the map of porches glowing over snow. I slid open a kitchen drawer, found the narrow pocket where I'd kept a few tools out while the boxes stayed taped. Tape measure pencil nub, steel folding rule. I lifted the rule, the hinge smooth and obedient in my palm, the metal cold with the night still trapped in it. Tomorrow, I'd walk the fence line, match the stain to whatever chart they'd decided was holy. I'd make measurements. I'd take photos with scale. I'd keep a better record than their red pen ever could. For tonight, I set the rule back, closed the drawer, and laid the welcome packet flat, smoothing the bent corner. The page crackled a small, papery sigh. Across the street, a front door deadbolt clicked. Then another, then silence. "Okay," I said into my quiet kitchen. "Let's start with the tomatoes." Outside, the gate beeped twice for someone else far away and predictable. The envelope was heavy and had that blue ink stamp that says certified like a dare. It thumped the mat when it came through the slot, a little puff of winter air following it across my shoes. Outside, the subdivision gate beeped twice its familiar stutter, then the sound dissolved into the glassy quiet of January. I slit the top with a butter knife and slid the letter out. The paper was thick enough to make a noise of its own. Notice of violation. Non-conforming fence stain. Corrective action within 7 days or escalating fines. 7 days. The signature at the bottom, Richard Cole President, had a pen drag in the loop of the R as if his hand had hesitated. A faint gray smudge tracked from his name into the date HOA 1/06/2020, like the ink couldn't make up its mind either. I set the letter next to the HOA welcome packet and pulled on a coat. The sun was bright, but not warm, bouncing off iced lawns. My fence ran the length of the side yard planks, a shade I'd matched to what the hardware store called Cedar Natural, and what Patricia would doubtless call wrong. Out on the grass, my boots squeaked over a crust the afternoon thaw hadn't touched yet. I took the steel folding rule from my pocket, flicked it open at the hinge, and pressed it against the wood. The metal was so cold it bit. Beside it, I held a color chip card from the original paint run. My phone camera made a little click as it captured the two side by side. I backed up for a second shot with the house number in frame, then one more with a Christmas wreath still clinging to the neighbor's door. If a tree falls in the woods and nobody takes a picture with scale, the HOA will swear it never happened. Working on a Sunday, a voice said soft enough to pretend it was just conversation. Linda stood on her porch with a mug, her wool socks stuffed into clogs. She kept her shoulders hunched inside her cardigan as if conversation could be a draft. "Certified love letter," I said, raising the notice. "I figured." She took a step down, then looked over my shoulder at the Whitford's blinds. "You got a minute?" "Sure." She passed me her phone as if it were contraband. A screenshot glowed on the screen eyesore watch in bold at the top of a closed group avatars lined like fence pickets. The photo was of my yard from an angle only 3 houses could have a tight zoom of my fence with the caption, "Lowering values 1 plank at a time." Names were blurred, but the timestamps weren't. "Who posted it?" I asked. Linda's mouth thinned. "Don't make me say. I won't." She glanced at the street again. "They think you won't push back, that you'll go quiet or go away." "I don't do either," I said. "But I do paperwork. That'll confuse them more than anger ever could." She took a sip and made a face at the heat. "You didn't hear it from me." "I didn't," I said, and gave her the phone back. Her hand shook the tiniest bit porcelain clinking against the mug saucer. Inside, I set up at the dining table the certified envelope at my elbow. The bylaws binder opened with the stiffness of something rarely used by the people who quote it the most. Pages hissed and settled. I ran my finger down Article 7, Exterior Maintenance and Architectural Control, until a footnote made as much noise as a siren. Notice and cure. Owner shall have not less than 14 days from the date of notice to cure any alleged nonconformity with the notice specifying the remedy required. 14, not 7. Specifying the remedy, not make it nicer. I looked back at Richard's smudged signature and then at the line, 7 days. I held the notice to the light. The watermark waved through like a flag in slow wind. The line item remedy required had been left as a blank implied. No color code, no swatch, just a threat on expensive paper. I pulled a legal pad close and started to list my block letters squarer than usual, photos with scale, color chip, fence purchase receipt, HOA, stain chart if one exists, neighbor vantage points, gate logs on nights of egging. The pad made that satisfying rasp when I tore the page free and paper-clipped it to the notice. Email next. I opened a blank message and typed slow enough to put the brakes on my temper. Subject Member Inspection Request 1239 Birch Ridge Records pursuant to covenants and Colorado. Common Interest Ownership Act. To records at birchridgehoa.org. President at birchridgehoa.org. CC Counsel at birchridgehoa.org. Me at ellismarrow.com. Dear Board, under the covenants and applicable law, I request inspection and copies of the following records related to my property. 1. All notices of violation issued to 1239 Birch Ridge in the last 12 months. 2. All emails and messages between any board member and or management company referencing 1239 or my name. 3. The current adopted stain ash color standards and any approved charts or swatches. 4 minutes of meetings where my property was discussed. Please propose inspection dates and provide the board's specific remedy per the covenant's notice and cure clause, minimum 14 days. Thank you. I attached the photos of the fence with the chip, and the rule dragged the notice of violation into the chain and added a view of the pen drag under Richard's name because sometimes a pen drag says more than the sentence above it. Before I hit send, I looked out through the blinds. Across the street, the Whitfords' shades were angled shut, but upstairs, a rectangle of blue light pulsed Tyler's room or a tank aquarium. The gate beeped twice in the distance lag as if confirming a note in a score. I clicked send. The email snicked away like a card into a deck. My phone buzzed a minute later. Linda. Heads up, Patricia's posting again. Another screenshot, this time a thread. Who lets them use that color? Replies stacked underneath a few, backing her with phrases like standards and protected values. 1 or 2 comments pushed back blurry empathy in pixels. Looks fine to me. The timestamps bothered me most, even spacing like a drumbeat. Me. Thanks, don't engage. Paper trail first. I printed the bylaws page with the notice and cure footnote, slid it into a plastic sleeve, and laid it on the table beside the certified notice. Side by side, they looked like the before and after of a haircut. The doorbell chimed. I half expected it to be Patricia with a lecture about community. It was a carrier in a navy jacket, cheeks burned from the cold. He held out a small stack of letters and a return receipt for me to sign. "Busy day for your street," he said, glancing across at the Whitford's decorations. "You all right?" "Doing fine," I said, scrawling my name where the green card told me to. The pen dug into the soft cardboard and snagged. When he left, the deadbolt sounded louder than usual when it turned. I took the steel rule outside again for a last photo, this time with the winter sun low enough to wash the grain. The hinge clicked as I folded it. In the still air, it sounded like punctuation. Back at the table, I opened my email tab to watch nothing happen. 10 minutes passed. I skimmed the bylaws index. 20 minutes. I read the management company's disclaimer about office hours. 30. The ping, when it came, felt too cheerful for what it said. Auto reply records at birchridgehoa.org. Thank you for your message. Your request will be addressed at the next regular board meeting. I scrolled for dates. The HOA website's meetings page had a photo of the clubhouse under summer light and the line, schedule posted quarterly. The last update was September. No winter dates. The calendar grid below it was blank white space. I stared at the empty squares until the page made a tiny digital sigh, the kind a site makes when it asks if you're still there. Across the street, the Whitford's blinds lifted the width of a finger, then fell. I clicked reply and typed, "Please confirm the date of the next regular meeting." I CC'd council at birchridgehoa.org again, and my own address twice for good measure. Metadata is still data. Outside the gate beeped one beat, then the lag like a sloppy metronome. Systems leave trails. You just have to be standing still long enough to hear them. The diner was already awake at 7:10, the kind of place where the coffee tastes like it's been working a double. Road crew jackets steamed near the door lawyers and knit ties hunched over eggs. Our booth had a rip in the vinyl that had been mended with clear tape which by now had turned the color of tea. Judge Naomi Klein tapped her pen once on a yellow legal pad and said, "Tell me only what you can prove." I took the cue. Certified notice, 7 days to cure. Bylaws say 14. No specified remedy. Photos with a color chip and a steel rule for scale. I tugged my jacket open so the rule's silver edge flashed. She clocked it with a half smile. "Keep that handy," she said. "A straight edge has a way of making liars look bent." Margot slid in with coffee, leaving rings like moons on the formica. "You want your usual judge. Let's start with proof," Naomi said, eyes still on me. "Then pancakes." I nodded, flipped my own pad to a fresh page. "They're moving in a closed group. Screenshots, timestamps intact. Names blurred," she asked. "Out of neighborly decency, She drew a small ladder on her pad, 4 rungs, neat and square. Beside each rung, she wrote a word. Request, she tapped the first. Escalate. Hearing request. Public session. I looked up. Not Sue. "Oh, people love to swing at the fences," she said. "But this is architectural control, not a bar fight. Your strongest weapon is the rulebook they wave at everyone else. Make them read it out loud." Margot came back with a plate that smelled like butter and warm sugar. Naomi snapped open the menu for show and closed it. "He'll take the hash and eggs," she told Margot, then to me, "Protein. We'll be at this a while." I laughed, despite myself. "Yes, ma'am." "First rung," Naomi said. "Records inspection. Narrow, surgical. You don't want them drowning you in junk. List exactly what you'll inspect." I set down my pen and listed with her rhythm. Emails mentioning my address. Gate logs for the past 60 days. Violation logs. Meeting minutes where I appear. And their standards, she added. Color charts, swatches, adoption date. If they can't produce them, the notice is a sermon, not law. We spoke in the easy murmur people use when the next booth might be listening. Outside, the slush along the curb had begun to collapse into smaller versions of itself, snowmelt ticking in the drain like a metronome. Margot set the plates down with a practiced thud. "Sugar or truth?" she asked the judge. "Truth," Naomi said, pouring more coffee. Then to me, "When they finally schedule this." "They haven't," I cut in. "Website calendar is empty. They'll discover a meeting suddenly," she said. "On a short fuse. You'll insist on proper notice. If they try to rush a vote, you slow them down with procedure." Make them locate the section. Make them read it. Ask who seconded. Ask for the text, not the summary. She tore off a sheet from her pad and slid it to me. At the top, she'd written in block letters, "Ask for the exact word." I tucked the sheet under my plate to keep the coffee from making art on it. What if they don't let me speak? They will. People like Patricia love the sound of their own fairness. They'll allow you 3 minutes. You'll bring a clock. At 3 minutes, you thank them and ask for a vote on the motion you've prepared. If they refuse, the refusal is the story. I penciled, "Bring a clock" in the margin. What about the smear posts? Keep the screenshots. Don't litigate feelings in the room, Naomi said. Artifacts only. This is the notice. This is the bylaw. Here is the mismatch. You're not here to argue character. Let their words introduce themselves. I nodded. Gate beeps twice when it lifts, I said, surprising myself. Always the same lag. Good, she said. Ask for gate logs by time. If the egging happened at 2:03 a.m., you want entries at 1:58 and 2:04 and the names attached. Even if you never use it, they'll know you could. I pushed my eggs around with the edge of my fork. You sound like this isn't your first HOA rodeo. It isn't, she said, and buttered her pancake to the edges. They don't scare me. Paper scares them. I took out the folder I'd brought, a manila one already freckled with coffee dots, and laid my revised inspection request on the table. Naomi slid it closer, pen poised. Subject line's good, she said. Statute cited clean. Tighter on 2. She struck a phrase, rewrote it in her square hand. Change. Any reference to any email referencing 1239 or Marrow, including attachments. They'll try to hide the attachments. What about text messages, I asked. Ask for those between board members pertaining to violations. They'll balk. You're not a court. But put it in the letter. It tells them which way your telescope points. She drew little tabs on my packet A for the notice, B for bylaws, page C for photos with scale D for the calendar screenshot. Index tabs calm the room, she said. Even people bent on unfairness want to look organized. Make liars look bent, I said, and glanced at the steel rule again. She followed my eyes. Bring it, she said. Don't brandish it. Just set it next to Exhibit C. Let the board see a straight line sitting there minding its business. Margot topped off our coffee. You two sound like you're planning a heist. Something quieter, Naomi said. A reading. I chewed, then asked the question I'd been holding. What if they tried to adjourn mid-argument? Naomi's pen clicked back in with a small decision. You stand. You say, for the record, please note I requested to be heard on Agenda Item 3 and was not permitted to read the text of Section 7. Then you ask the secretary to read it. In the silence that follows, you hand her a copy. And if they vote anyway, then you send a letter to the management company with the transcript of what they refuse to read. Copy their insurer. Copy the city clerk. Public story beats closed room every time. She studied me over the rim of her cup. It matters that your voice stays even. That I can do, I said. She leaned in, slightly softening her tone. You're angry. I am. I took a breath and found the middle of it. But I'm angrier when process is used as theater. Then make process honest, she said. They will try to rush a vote. Slow them down with procedure. Make them read their own rules out loud. The sentence landed with the weight of a small gavel. Margot slid the check toward the edge of the table like a paper boat toward a dock. Naomi signed the bottom of my inspection request with a neat reviewed, dated it, and handed me a second sheet, her annotated checklist. Who chairs? Who seconds? What is the motion? What is the standard? Where is the standard? Read it aloud. Timestamps. Who records minutes? Request copy before adjournment. Bring 2 pens, she added. One always runs out when someone lies. I laughed again. It sounded better in my own ears this time. I'll bring 3. Call me after the inspection, she said. If they give you 20 minutes for 2 years of emails, you'll need a triage plan. What's the plan? Subject lines first, she said without pause. Search by your address number, then your last name, then any misspelling they've used. Photo attachments next. Anything with the word lean. Skip newsletters. My phone vibrated face down on the table. I flipped it over. HOA Management. Your inspection window is set for 20 minutes tomorrow, 9:30 a.m., office conference room. I looked up. 20 minutes, I said. Naomi didn't flinch. Then they've told us who they are. She pushed her coffee aside and tapped the annotated checklist with her pen. And we've told them what we'll be. Outside, the plow left a seam of slush across Maine. The bell over the diner door jangled as a pair of electricians came in shaking snow off their shoulders. The world went on as it does even when a window tightens to 20 minutes. "Okay," I said, sliding the revised request into the folder with its new index tabs. "Tomorrow, we read." By July, the subdivision smelled like warmed cedar and lawn fuel. In the garage, the fan ticked as it spun, stirring sawdust into lazy curlicues. I'd left the rolling door half open for shade. On my phone, a notification badge burst like a flare. Closed Group 29, new posts. The first image filled the screen, me at the hose head, turned mouth mid-word. The photo was cropped tight, my face a little warped by the convex curve of the camera. "Lowering values 1 gallon at a time," the caption read. A line of hearts and angry faces trailed below it like confetti thrown by people you don't invite to weddings. I breathed through my teeth and hit screen record. The red dot bloomed at the corner. The timer started to count. Another post blinked up a split image comparing my fence to a stock photo of a compliant finish. In the corner, the poster's mouse hovered, then clicked the 3 dots. The timestamp on my recording jumped from 12:41:07 to 12:44:23, 2 minutes, and change vanished like a card palmed from a deck. I rewound, played it again. Hover, click, jump. "Okay," I said to the fan. "We'll keep that." I set the phone in a clamp and angled it at my laptop for the HOA's virtual meeting. The waiting room filled with squares that were mostly initials set against tasteful pastels. Microphones clicked live and dead in irregular pops. Someone's dog shook its collar somewhere off camera. Patricia's square came on with video, a prim blouse, and a necklace that caught light like an accusation. "Good evening, neighbors," she said into the ring of her mic. "I've prepared a brief overview of concerns." "Point of order," I said, and unmuted. "Has the agenda been circulated with supporting documents 48 hours in advance?" Ethan Park, the HOA's counsel, appeared as a name with no video. His voice was clipped tidy. "We'll take comments at the end, Mr. Marrow." That wasn't a comment, I said. It was a question. Richard's square flickered on forehead, prominent glasses sliding down. "Let's proceed, please." Patricia shared her screen. A slide deck opened with a title that made itself too big, The Ellis Problem. I watched my own image appear in the first slide, cropped tight hose caught mid-sway like a snake. The caption in tasteful sans serif pattern of disregard. I raised my phone to show it the lower corner of her screen, recorded at 6:31 p.m. She clicked forward to a screenshot of the eyesore watch thread. Names blurred, timestamps crisp. "Patricia," I said, "are you entering those attachments into the record?" Ethan's voice again. "We'll admit exhibits after the chair recognizes them. So, not now," I said. "Later," he said, "if time permits." "Point taken," I said, and resumed writing. The red dot pulsed on my phone patient as a metronome. Midway through, the secretary began to read minutes from the previous month. The board heard extensive complaints regarding property 1239 and discussed options including fines and enforcement. "Stop," I said. "Could you read the exact language?" The square with Secretary Dana glowed. Paper rustled near her mic. "That is the language." I scrolled my notes and found the audio I'd captured in June, a neighbor's live stream with comments floating like bubbles. The minutes then had included the phrase, "unwanted element." It had snagged in my ear like a thorn. Now in Dana's reading, no thorn, just blandness. "Point of order," I said. The phrase, "unwanted element," appeared in the June discussion. It is not reflected in your minutes. Would the secretary confirm whether she edited that out? Rustle. A cough. "Ethan, Mr. Marrow minutes are a summary, not a transcript. Summaries can be accurate or they can be laundered," I said too evenly to be mistaken for heat. "Which is it tonight?" Patricia leaned into frame. "We will not tolerate intimidation. I'm asking for words, not feelings," I said. "Read the exact word." Richard took off his glasses and pinched the bridge of his nose like that might reorganize the evening. "Let's move along." "Moving along is not the same as correcting the record," I said. Ethan sighed into his mute. Noted. The presentation resumed. A slide of my fence cropped so tight you couldn't see the neighboring fences that had sunburned to 3 different browns. A slide of my mailbox with a shadow angled to make it look like it tilted. When it ended, Richard cleared his throat. "We'll now entertain motions." "Point of process," I said. "Have you circulated the adopted stain chart? And is there a motion regarding my property on tonight's agenda?" Ethan answered for him. "The board intends to set a hearing." In accordance with the bylaw's notice requirements, I asked. "The board intends to set a hearing," he repeated as if the echo could turn into law. When the meeting ended with the soft pop of 100 tiny exits, I let the screen sit black for a beat and listened to my own house breathe. The fan ticked. Outside, some kid popped a skateboard tail on the sidewalk. In the garage, the steel rule waited on the bench where I'd set it earlier. I pressed it flat against a scrapboard and lifted my hand. The hinge rose and fell with a wobble I hadn't noticed until now, as if the metal had been carrying a quiet tension and decided to show it. Me too, I told it and smiled despite myself. An email dinged. The subject line was crisp as a haircut. Notice of hearing. I opened it and read. The date sat there like a dare hearing set for August 5th, 2021 at 6:00 p.m. I looked at the bylaws binder still open to Article 7 with its gentle footnote. 14 days notice from the date of notice, it said. The email header bore July 25th, 6th, 14 p.m. 10 days. The letter did not specify the remedy. It did promise that failure to attend may result in further action. I printed the email the edges warm from the machine. I laid it beside the June minutes and the screen record timestamps and lined the pages like I was making a tiny fence on the workbench. The phone chimed again. Linda, you seeing this? They're celebrating like it's a parade. Me, save the posts, don't wade in. Linda, already did. Tyler just posted a boomerang of the hose clip. She commented, finally. I slid the steel rule up the bench until it touched the paper edges. The hinge lifted a fraction as if to see over them. A small thing that bend, but I logged it in my notes anyway. Prop hinge, off true. The garage smelled like cedar and machine oil and something sweet I couldn't place, maybe a forgotten drop of gasoline from the mower's last pass. Outside, the late sun cut the alley into gold and shade. The gate at the subdivision entrance beeped twice lag like it meant to. I drafted a reply to the management company. Subject defect in notice. 1239 Birch Ridge. Request to reschedule. Per covenants. Dear Management and Board. The notice, dated July 25th, sets a hearing on August 5th. The covenants require not less than 14 days' notice and a specified remedy. Please provide compliant notice and the specific remedy sought. I will appear at any properly noticed hearing. Ethan responded in 6 minutes, his courtesy timed to impress without helping. Ethan, Park Council. Mr. Merrow, the board believes the notice is sufficient. We look forward to hearing from you on August 5th. I typed slowly. Council, please confirm whether the board adopted a stain standard and when. Kindly produce the chart. No reply. I sent it anyway, CC'd. Council at Birch Ridge HOA BCC'd me at Ellis Merrow again to catch the headers and sat back. In the window over my bench, the cul-de-sac threw its picture at me, a slice of sky, the Whitford's garage, the square of their side door. My steel rule lay across paper like a shoreline. I pressed the hinge again. It lifted and settled, lifted and settled. A thing can remember straightness and still forget how to rest there. The laptop chimed with one more email. From council at birchridgehoa.org. The preview text showed the first clause. Failure to attend may result in further action, including lien review. I stared at the words until the white of the screen cooled around them. Somewhere in the neighborhood, sprinklers started their stitched hiss over lawns that never asked to be battlegrounds. I opened the email and read it twice. Then I added it to the fence of paper on my bench. Okay, I said into the cedar air. Daylight it is. The Birch Ridge Community Hall smelled like burnt coffee and winter coats that had only just forgiven last year. Folding chairs made aisles like cornrows. A handwritten placard at the front read Violation Review in letters that had started confident and finished small. The fluorescent tubes hummed in a key slightly wrong for human bones. At the head table, Richard shuffled papers he didn't seem to be reading. Patricia leaned into Allie's ears, her voice a needle threaded with certainty. Tyler took the front row seat farthest from me and smirked like he'd practiced in a mirror. My name was typed on a tent card with the street number underneath as if the number were the real offense. I signed the sheet the secretary slid toward me. Please state your address for the record, she murmured, microphone too close to her breath. 1239 Birch Ridge, I said, and I'd like to request that Exhibits A through D be admitted in the order presented, uninterrupted. Ethan Park adjusted his tie without touching it. We'll hear from the complainant first, he said, not looking at me. Point of process, I said. The bylaws provide equal time and the board circulated no specific remedy. Richard's hand hovered over the gavel that was really a wooden mallet from Crafts Day. We'll allow you time, he said, eyes sliding away. Patricia, you may proceed. The lights dimmed a fraction enough to make the projector's glow look authoritative. Patricia's title slide popped up, the Ellis Problem Serif font, trying to make a case by itself. She clicked to a zoomed photo of me carrying a hose taken from a slant that shortened the distance between the nozzle and the ground until it looked like flood. Unsafe, she said, the word appearing beneath my face. Is this exhibit available to the owner? I asked. Questions at the end, Ethan said. She clicked again, a cropped image of my fence shadow maximizing the contrast. Pattern of disregard, she read, and smiled like a verdict. Someone in the fourth row coughed the syllables of a word that could have been ridiculous or miserable. The clerk's fingers paused over the keyboard, then caught up. I watched the screen as much as the audience where the mouse hovered, where it darted. A cursor hesitated over the corner timestamp. The number winked, then advanced. I saw it. Maybe two others did. Patricia segued to community input. Out came screenshots from the closed group Eyesore Watch. Protect our values. The phrases read softly to avoid being heard saying them out loud. The room made the noises of people wanting to agree without being quoted. Thank you, Richard said too quickly when the last slide landed. We'll now, Exhibits A.D., I said, already standing. Uninterrupted. He glanced at Ethan, who gave a slight nod that said, Control looks better than refusal. Richard gestured at me with his palm like I was a waiter, and he'd changed his mind. I carried my packet to the projector and lay the index-tabbed stack beside the laptop. My thumb brushed the steel rule in my pocket. The hinge bent the smallest degree against the fabric, a private reminder of assumptions. Exhibit A, I said, keeping my voice level. Certified Notice of Violation dated January 6, 2020. Specifying corrective action within 7 days. I clicked to a photo of the letter on my kitchen table, the ink smudge under Richard's name visible even in projection. Exhibit B. I went on clicking to the bylaws page. Article 7. Notice and cure. Owner shall have not less than 14 days from the date of notice to cure any alleged nonconformity with the notice specifying the remedy required. I let the text sit large enough for even the back row to read. The quotation marks clicked in the clerk's notes. Exhibit C. Photos of the fence with the color chip and the steel rule for scale. Scale confirms variance within the tolerance listed in past approvals for adjacent properties. I let that hang. No one asked for the neighbors' addresses. No one wanted to know how easy it would be to look. Exhibit D, I said. A screen recording of the community input Patricia referenced. Watch the cursor in the lower right. The video began, hover over 3 dots timestamp at 12:41:07. A click, jump to 12:44:23. 2 minutes and change gone like a skipped record. I object, Patricia said, rising so fast her chair barked the floor. This is cherry-picked. It's the whole screen, I said. If there's more, I'd be glad to view it with the board. Ethan leaned to his microphone. The board will consider all context. Then consider this, I said, and clicked again. The next clip opened in the pale rectangle the grain of my porch light crisp enough to count bugs in. Tyler was in the picture hoodie, up can of eggs in hand. He laughed when the first one slipped out of his grip and splatted short. He moved closer. Behind him, across the street on their porch, Patricia's silhouette lifted a phone. You couldn't see her face, but you could hear the bright sound she made when one egg found the camera housing. A few chairs creaked. 2 people in the middle turned their heads toward Tyler in the front row. He tried to fold his arms into a shrug and only got halfway. I let the clip run until the spray paint appeared the word flaring ugly on my garage door. The audio was a thin ribbon of teenage bravado, got it? Then it ended, and the room had a new temperature. Ethan looked at Richard the way attorneys look at clients moments before learning what their retainer actually covers. Patricia's jaw tightened so far you could see the thought of breaking porcelain travel down her neck. The clerk stopped typing. A neighbor near the aisle said not nearly quietly enough, "Wait, that's not what he looked like," and a ripple went through the folding chairs as if someone had passed a current under them. "Mr. Merrow," Richard said, voice dented, You've presented your materials. For the record, I said I request the board read Article 7 into the minutes and state the specific remedy required by the covenants." Ethan leaned toward Richard, hand over his mic, but not his mouth. "If this transcript leaks, liability triples." The clerk blinked. Her fingers hovered again. "Point of process," I said softly, but so the mic would catch it. "Please speak up. The minutes should capture counsel's advice to the chair." Patricia rounded on me half-step into the aisle. "You're making a spectacle. This is a neighborhood, not a courtroom. This is a meeting," I said. "Meetings keep records. Records use words. Richard's gavel mallet tapped the table once and missed the tiny coaster. "We'll adjourn briefly," he said, throat clearing afterward like a man who'd swallowed a bug. 5 minutes. He stood and nearly knocked his own water over. Ethan's hand moved faster than the rest of him to right the cup. Patricia's circle closed around her like birds landing in a nearby tree when a hawk enters the frame. Tyler stared at the stain in his sneakers as if it might tell him a better story. I stepped back from the projector and laid my steel rule beside the mouse. The hinge didn't lie flat, but the edge still knew straight when it saw it. Quietly, I lined my exhibits so their margins matched. People see a straight stack and call it reasonable. Papers don't know who's right. They do know order. 2 minutes, the clerk whispered to me, though 5 had been announced. "Plenty," I said. "I only need the exact word." The city annex chamber looked like it had been built to make decisions feel heavier. The seal of Colorado hung above the dais. Microphones waited like polite birds. Cameras blinked their small red eyes. A reporter in the front row whispered, "HOA dispute," turned legal circus, and his colleague shushed him without conviction. Patricia arrived early in a suit the color of certainty, clutching a folder fat with printouts. Tyler trailed her phone cupped in his palm like a talisman. She scanned the rows and smiled as if she'd just walked onto a stage she'd rented by the hour. "Good afternoon," she announced before anyone asked, stepping to the nearest podium as if proximity were authority. "This man threatens our values." The microphones hummed. I set the steel rule flat on the official podium and felt the hinge resist the surface by the smallest degree. Bent, but visible. Waiting. The mayor's aide checked his agenda and gave me a nod that meant, "You're up when you're up." A clerk at the side table clicked into a new document title line ready, "Public Statement, Community Safety and HOA Concerns." Pens poised, lids unsnapped. The sound of a room about to write something down. I stepped forward. The podium had a notch where someone over years had tapped a ring in thought. I set my phone beside the steel rule screen mirrored to the chamber's display. A waveform shimmered against the wall at jagged river peaks and troughs bright as mercury. "We'll begin with a call," I said, keeping my voice even but making sure it reached the back. Time stamped December 2019. Fresh Mart, Oak Street. Patricia raised a hand. "Objection," she said automatically like a child playing courtroom. "Public comment is closed," the aide said. "This is a statement." The first bars of the 911 recording filled the room, the operator's calm, and then Patricia's voice pitched high breathy with performance. "This is an emergency. Send as many cars as you can. 10, 20. It echoed a little in the chamber the way truth does when it's finally given space. A reporter stopped pretending not to record. "Did she say 20? He whispered. Yes, his colleague said, not whispering at all. The waveform rolled on. "Describe the threat," the operator asked. Tall Patricia's voice said, "Intimidating." I let the clip end where the operator stated officers will prioritize other emergencies first. The air after it felt scrubbed. You don't always know how loud a lie was until the lie leaves the room. Patricia swallowed into a microphone she no longer controlled. "That clip is out of context." Tyler, without looking up, whispered, "Mom, we're done," and I saw his phone tilt down until its camera pointed at carpet. I touched the steel rule with 2 fingers, a habit now reminder, and anchor. For the record, I said I have provided the clerk copies of the call and its metadata, as well as accompanying video exhibits from my property. The aide nodded, and the clerk stacked folders blue tabs in a row like a neat thought. "You should know who's speaking to you," I said. "Rumor has enjoyed a long run." A few heads turned. I let the quiet hold for a beat, Naomi's advice about silence doing its own work. "Good afternoon," I said. "I'm Ellis Marrow." A reporter lifted his pen but didn't write yet. I reached into my inside pocket and brought out a leather case worn smooth at the edges. The badge came out with the deliberate thud of a truth returning to its seat. I set it beside the steel rule, the gold, catching the chamber lights and throwing them back at the ceiling. "I'm the chief of police for this city." The sound was not one sound but a draft of them gasps. A soft "You're kidding," the camera shutters doubling their tempo. Someone in the back said, "She called the cops on the chief and his row didn't know if they were allowed to laugh." Patricia took a half step back as if the floor had moved. Her folder sagged at one end, papers listing. Color climbed her cheeks upward until it ran out of new territory. "You can't." "You asked for 20 police cars." "Ms. Whitford," I said, voice still even. "I supervise every one of them." A reporter in a navy blazer stood. "Chief, are you saying the HOA's claims were unfounded? I'm saying the record should be complete," I said. "Here is the rest." The screen changed to a compilation, the timestamp jump from the closed group, the minutes that smoothed away the word's unwanted element, the notice of hearing with its 10-day defect. On the wall, the documents looked like what they were, paper at scale. The clerk typed more quickly now, as if speed could catch honesty while it ran. "Chief," another reporter called Will. "There be charges?" "This is not a criminal trial," I said. "This is a community correcting itself." I felt the steel rule under my palm, its bent hinge making a thin shadow. "But false reports and harassment have consequences." Tyler's chair squeaked. He had somehow made himself smaller without moving. Patricia cleared her throat like a person preparing to speak for an audience that had left. "We were just protecting standards," she said, and reached for the old magic words. "Property values. Standards begin with the standard of telling the truth," I said, "and with reading the rule you cite." I nodded to the clerk, who lifted Article 7 as if it were a program. She read the sentence we had all memorized by now, not less than 14 days' notice, specifying the remedy. It sounded official and simple at the same time. Chief A voice near the press row piped up, "Is the board going to resign tonight?" Heads pivoted like sunflowers finding the sun. Richard, mid-row necktie a size too tight for the heat he was suddenly in, clutched at the knot as if it had betrayed him. He stood halfway and sat again, legs not decided. "I'm not the HOA," I said, "but the community is watching." The aide cleared his throat. "We'll distribute the exhibits to media after this session," he said, "professionalism doing the work of mercy." I put the badge back in its case and didn't hurry the motion. "This has never been about winning a room," I said. "It's about putting the facts where rooms can see them." I tapped the steel rule once gentle, the way you tap a bar to check it's true. "This line is still straight. We can learn to lay it." Patricia's folder slipped the rest of the way and spilled papers into a white fan at her shoes. Tyler knelt, tried to gather them, and whispered, "Mom, please," without an audience to play for. The cameras caught none of that and all of it. I stepped back so the clerk could finish the entry. The microphones hummed again, satisfied to be doing their job. "Are we done?" the aide asked. "For today," I said. "We'll let the record do some work." Spring rain made the garage smell like cedar and pennies. I laid the steel rule on the workbench, and the shop light found the bend in the hinge, a small ridge of shadow that ran like a thought you can't unknot. The subdivision was quiet except for the stitched hiss of sprinklers and the occasional tire lifting water from the street. A knock, then the side door eased open. Naomi stepped in, shaking a few droplets from her umbrella before hooking it on a pegboard like she'd installed the peg herself. "Permission to enter your cathedral of order," she said, smiling at the neat rows of wrenches. "Granted," I said. "Just don't preach in the key of 'I told you so.'" "Tempting," she said, and took in the bench, the clipboard, the letter clipped there with the management company's logo. She picked up the steel rule, first thumb and forefinger at the hinge, and flexed it gently. "Even steel remembers its line if you guide it. I could use that to sell a lot of workshops," I said. "Saturdays. Straighten a hinge. Straighten your life. Charge extra for coffee," she said. She set the rule down beside the clipboard and lifted the letter. The paper had that expensive, toothy feel a place uses when it wants to look improved. Naomi read silently for a moment, then, as if to stage the sound, read aloud, "The board regrets the distress caused to Mr. Ellis Marrow and acknowledges inaccuracies in our prior minutes and notices. We apologize for any inconvenience and for failing to adhere to our notice standards." Her finger stopped under a sentence. "The association commits to revised procedures and training." She glanced at me over the top edge. "They put your name in minutes with regret. That's as close to confession as they'll get. It's the right words I said. Not sure it's the right voice. Voice catches up when habits do," she said. "What matters is that it's in the book." Rain ticked louder along the alley. Across the street, the Whitford's house had a new family in it now, toys stacked like small bright promises near the porch. The blinds didn't watch anymore. Naomi set the letter down and took the rule again. "Shall we?" I braced one end of the rule against a scrap of maple so the hinge sat proud where we could see it. Naomi placed her thumbs on either side of the joint, not forcing, just asking the metal to consider its options. She breathed out slow. I added just enough pressure to feel the hinge answer. There was a quiet little sound, a click that was also a sigh, and the shadow ridge thinned. "There," she said. "Not perfect. Better. Like minutes," I said. She laughed without letting go. "Check it." I ran the edge along the face of the bench and felt for daylight between steel and wood. The gap was still there, but smaller. The line truer than it had been this time last year. I folded and opened the rule 3 times until the hinge stopped arguing and decided to cooperate. "Keep it flat under a book overnight," she said. Heavy one. Bylaws, maybe. I only own one copy, I said. It has to remain mobile. She nodded toward the clipboard. You respond to their apology. I drafted a letter, I said, sliding it across, thanking them for the correction, asking that the training include reading the text of standards out loud at each hearing. Make them fall in love with exact words, she said. Good. Keep it short. I put the letter back under the clip. My fingers held on a beat longer than necessary. You're still carrying it, Naomi said softly. What is it in this sentence? The way rooms change when you walk into them with a badge hidden in a pocket, she said. The way some people only learn what fairness is by being seen behaving unfairly. I looked down at the bench where the steel ruled lay half-folded like a field with one fence upright and another fallen. I keep thinking about the kids across the street, I said. They've got chalk lines on the sidewalk now. Then the room changed in a way that matters, she said. Sometimes the apology you need is the quiet one, the kind nobody writes. We stood without talking for a while. The rain eased, and the roof found its old breath again. Somewhere 2 blocks over, a dog barked once at the thunder that never quite arrived. A knock knocked the quiet back into place. The side door opened a gentle 4 inches, and Linda pushed through with a pie balanced on a towel. The crust smelled of cinnamon and the kind of competence that has seen several holidays. You two plotting my next act? She asked. Only if it involves carbohydrates, I said. Came to deliver this, she said, setting the pie on the bench, and to tell you you're on grill duty next month. The community BBQ is back on. People want you there. I looked at Naomi. She quirked an eyebrow that translated to accept graciously. I can burn meat as well as the next chief, I said. It's not about the burgers, Linda said. It's about you flipping them where everyone can watch you not make a speech. An endorsement of silence, Naomi said. Rare valuable. Linda wiped her hands on the towel. Also, Tyler emailed the food bank to keep his Thursday shift, she said, as if tasting the sentence for any bitterness left. He asked if he could help at the grill, too. The hinge inside the steel rule felt straighter than a minute ago. There's room on the tongs for 2 people, I said. Linda nodded toward the clipboard. You going to frame that apology? I'm going to file it, I said, and keep it where it can be found in 30 seconds. Good, she said. I'll tell the sign-up sheet you said yes. She hugged Naomi in the way neighbors do when they see each other more in crises than in calm. At the door, she looked back. Oh, color chart committee meets next week. It's civil. I'm busy flattening steel, I said. She grinned, and the door murmured shut. Naomi watched the rain find itself again on the concrete. I remember when you wouldn't have kept the apology, she said. I would have back then, I said, but I would have underlined it harder. She set the steel rule under the HOA binder open to Article 7 like a bookmark knew its job. There are 2 kinds of keeping, she said. Keeping score and keeping record. Guess which one holds up? Record, I said, because the word felt like the tool it is. Naomi leaned against the bench and let her hands go still. The question is, Alice, do you forgive or just file away? Rain made a soft counting sound. The garage smelled like the recipe cards I don't own and the hardware drawers I do. Across the street, a tricycle tipped on its side, giving the evening a bright red dot. I don't know yet, I said. Maybe I'm allowed to let the file sit and the forgiveness take its time. You are, she said. Just don't mistake delay for depth. We ate pie off shop paper plates with forks borrowed from a toolbox drawer. It tasted like somebody else's good decision. Naomi left with the umbrella and a second slice in foil. I stood in the door and watched the cul-de-sac practicing being ordinary again. Inside, I placed the steel rule under the binder and then balanced an old law text on top for good measure. The weight wasn't heavy exactly, it was steady. The hinge settled toward flatness you could earn, not declare. See you in the morning, I told the bench. The garage clicked its single light off and the wet street returned my house to me, room by room. The park pavilion wore July like a bright shirt sun printed through the slats, kids running figure 8s around picnic tables, a drift of smoke lifting from a pair of borrowed grills. Crockpots lined one bench with masking tape labels in different handwritings. Anita's baked beans. Mrs. Patel's sog, paneer. Gus's peach cobbler. Someone had strung paper lanterns under the beams. They wobbled gently every time the breeze remembered us. I set the flat of the spatula to the hot grate and pressed down just enough to hear the sear. The steel rule lay on the table to my right hinge, repinned and burnished, a faint scar catching the light the way healed skin does. Naomi stood behind the condiments with a stack of paper plates policing portions with the judgment of someone who had argued bigger cases. Linda moved among coolers, tapping lids, handing out water bottles like it was her job to prevent dehydration and gossip in equal measure. At the edge of the pavilion, the HOA board clustered near a portable microphone, 3 stiff men and 1 stiff woman trying to look loose. Richard's tie read summer, but seemed to be choking him anyway. A laminated poster leaned against the podium. Community Garden Renewal Fund launched today. Someone had attempted a graphic of a watering can and produced something that looked like a small elephant with rain. Grillmaster Linda said at my shoulder, "Your line is getting ideas. Make them hold the buns like tickets," I said, flipping 2 patties to even applause. "I'll deputize," she said, and did. Buns like tickets, no ticket, no burger. Earning mock booze and cheerful compliance. Tyler worked the side table with the foil pans tongs in hand, movements careful. He'd cut his hair since the winter, and humility fit him better than any style. His apron read "Volunteer" in a font that had no need to shout. When a little boy asked if he could try the tongs, Tyler crouched to show him hand under small hand heat kept at a distance. The mayor's aide stepped to the mic and tapped it twice. The little feedback squeal gave the pavilion a shared wince. "Thank you all for coming," he said, and introduced Richard, who walked the few feet as if they were a hallway with cameras. Richard unfolded a paper that had clearly been folded too recently to be comfortable. On behalf of the Birch Ridge Homeowners Association, he read, "Not trusting himself to look up, we wish to acknowledge and apologize for prior inaccuracies in minutes and notices. We have adopted new procedures and will undergo training." He paused. The breeze flipped a corner of the page. He put a single finger on it as if taming a small animal. "We also commit to seeding a community garden renewal fund with an initial donation of $10,000 with ongoing contributions from voluntary events and HOA allocations to support shared spaces and neighborhood food security." He cleared his throat. "We will post ledger entries monthly." "Ledger entries," Naomi murmured behind me, approving and amused. "Be still my heart." A folding table to one side held a binder with a plastic sleeve on the cover fund ledger. The first page showed entry numbers July 2024, $10,000 initial seed board approved with Richard's name in an earnest slant. Under it, a line for entry numbers 02 waited like a blank promise. Applause started near the lemonade and coordinated itself across the crowd. Even the skeptical clappers clapped. Patricia wasn't at the microphone. She wasn't anywhere visible. A rumor had been that she'd moved 2 zip codes over. Another rumor said she was simply tired of being watched. The smoke shifted. For a moment, it smelled like a dozen backyards forgetting their fences. I plated 2 burgers and a veggie skewer for a grandmother who told me 3 different stories about 3 different grandkids without catching a breath. When she left, Naomi slid a plate toward me with a look that meant eat something. I took a bite between turns at the grill, the bun soaking grease in a way that always makes sense in July. Tyler edged closer when there was a lull. He didn't make me help with his eyes this time. "Sir," he said, and his voice didn't crack. "Ellis." "Tyler," I said. He glanced at the steel rule on the table and then back at me. He stopped, sorted his words like tools, and started again. "I've been showing up on Thursdays. The food bank. They let me train new volunteers now. I wanted to say thank you for not throwing the toolbox at me." "You earned Thursday," I said. "Keep earning it." He nodded. The nod went deeper than his chin. It seemed to move the bones behind his eyes. He reached out his hand. I wiped mine on a towel before I took it and felt that this time the handshake wasn't ceremony. It was a join. "Hold 1 second, I said, and I picked up the steel rule. The hinge folded and unfolded smooth. I held it across my palms. "This is yours if you want it." He looked at the metal like it might recite a poem. "Are you sure? Measure straight," I said. "Especially when it's easier not to." He took the rule. The weight registering in his grip, the hinge giving its new soft click. He slid it into the long pocket of his apron as if that apron had always been waiting for something worthy. Someone near the lemonade saw and started to clap again, offbeat but contagious. The sound moved through the pavilion until even the paper lanterns seemed to nod in time. A family queued in front of Tyler, then black parents with 2 kids in swim shirts, hair damp and smelling like pool. The little girl pointed at the macaroni and whispered to him like she was telling a secret. He served them careful portions, didn't hurry the motions, and when the father said, "Thanks, son," Tyler met his eyes and said, "You're welcome," like those words finally belonged to his mouth. "Look at that," Linda said, elbow gentle in my side. "That's a ledger entry." "Number 2, I said, and flipped 2 more burgers to catch us up. Richard drifted over without tie, now carrying a stack of paper cups he didn't seem to know how to place. He set them down and picked them up again. "Ellis," he said, voice low, as if he were visiting me in a hospital, "we'll need your eyes on the training draft, if you're willing. I'll read it for the exact word I said." He smiled, and it was a human smile, not a bored smile. We could use more of those. Naomi slid a spoon into the potato salad with judicial gravitas. "The standard of care is seasoning," she said to no one and to everyone. I kept the spatula moving with a rhythm that synced to the little squeals of kids and the thunk of a cooler lid. It didn't feel like holding court. It felt like holding a place while it remembered how to be itself. At some point, the mayor's aide came around with the binder and a pen. People wrote numbers next to entry numbers: 02 donations, 20s, 5s, checks folded inside envelopes. The page grew a small, practical forest of ink. Linda signed a line for in-kind grill fuel and then added a smiley face like punctuation that had learned good manners. "Refill," Naomi said, trading me a tray for a tray. "You've got another wave." I tipped a new bag of charcoal into the kettle. It rattled like rain in a different language. When the flame took a gust of heat, pressed the hair on my arm flat, and the air smelled briefly like the first time I learned how not to burn a steak Sarah liked. I pulled my phone from my pocket in a quiet moment and touched the photo of Sarah I kept pinned to the home screen. We were by a lake in late light, her mouth about to say something clever that had been a kindness in disguise. I angled the phone away from the smoke and said what I'd been carrying since the apology letter. "You were right," I told her image. The high road bends back. Kids jostled the sauce bottles like they were science experiments. Tyler walked by with the tongs and, without asking, took the left side of the grill. He didn't try to show me anything. He just matched me one flip behind, and the line moved in a clean new cadence. Linda called tickets, and the little boy from earlier flashed his bun like a winning stub. Naomi lifted her paper plate toward me in a toast that didn't need words. The lanterns rocked again, and if they made any sound at all, it was the sound of a neighborhood exhaling. I set down the spatula for a second and let my hand rest on the empty space where the steel rule had been. The tabletop held the warmth anyway. When I picked the spatula back up, the edge felt true. "Order up," I said, and the park took it and answered. The pavilion still hummed with voices as dusk stretched long shadows across the grass smoke and laughter weaving into one fabric. The steel rule hinge repinned had left my hands for Tyler's, an object once bent, now a marker of repair. What we fought over wasn't just groceries or fences. It was the right to draw lines honestly to keep systems from leaning on lies. Communities don't heal by decree. They heal by sharing tables, ledger entries, and a steadied gaze. Justice isn't loud, it's steady. Share your own HOA experiences in the comments. Sometimes the quietest stories carry the sharpest lessons.